Hey everybody, welcome. It's our Saturday webinar. We are doing the Elementary Education 5001, just making sure I'm live here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on my chat, making sure everybody can hear me okay. If you can hear me, let me know in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and go live on Facebook. Here we go. All right. So I'm Kathleen Jasper, and today we are going to be working on the Elementary Education 5001. And this is a very large test and it takes a lot of preparation. So I like to do a 5001 webinar every couple of months to help me and others get into this test and see what we need to do in order to be successful. I'm just going to check Facebook really quick and make sure I'm live. As you come into the webinar, go ahead and say hello. I want to make sure, yep, I'm good, I'm live, awesome. All right, so as you come into the webinar, say hello and let me know if you guys can hear me okay. Right now, we just have a few people coming in. Hello, Brianna, welcome, welcome. So glad you're here. Okay, so really, I wanted to talk quickly about my new book for the 5001. Now, this is a second edition, and I have just created this book because I wanted to update the old book. Now, listen, if you purchase the first edition that has been out forever, you are in good hands. Everything is good. Don't buy the second edition because it's virtually the same with just a few additions. But if you can, and you haven't purchased the first edition yet, make sure you buy the second edition. It's got tabs. It has updated graphics. It has a couple of extra practice tests at the end of each section, little mini quizzes. There's just some extra content in this book. And so this is the updated version. Now, really quickly, if you purchase the digital book from our website, you can go to your download link and you can get the updated version. It's already there. But if you purchase the physical book on Amazon already and you purchase the first edition, don't buy the second edition, you're fine. But if you haven't purchased yet, this is the book. Now, with this webinar, we have a free study guide, and you can just use our free stuff for this particular test. We have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel. We have this webinar. We have all kinds of things. So if you're trying to save money, I always have free stuff, and that's what this webinar is today. So today we're going to go over the test structure. We're going to talk about specific test questions. I'm going to talk to you about test strategy, and I'm going to take questions periodically throughout the webinar. Okay. Now, if you have questions and you are inside the webinar, you can ask them in the chat. And I have my colleague in here. Her name is Tess, and she will be answering questions. After this webinar is over, those of you who have signed up, you will receive an email from me, which is going to have the replay link, the study guide, and any extra resources we talk about today. If you're watching me on social media right now and you just stumbled upon the webinar and you're like, how do I get these resources? There's a link in the description that you can click. It'll take you to a webinar sign-up page. And on that page is a replay page. And you'll see the study guide there and all the resources there. So you can just watch for now and do that later if you don't want to get taken away from the webinar. Also in the webinar today, I'm going to be projecting a presentation, and it's basically the little mini study guide that you got with this webinar, but it's just formatted a little bit differently for viewing purposes. So if you have registered for this webinar and you are in the chat right now, talking, and I can see we have Erica, Samantha, Dion, Tess is in there talking to people, Brianna, all of you who are in here, you will receive the follow-up email. So you can just watch the webinar. You don't have to download anything at this time. And you will receive everything you need after the webinar is over. Just give us about an hour and then we'll send out that webinar. And again, if you're on social media watching this, all you have to do is click the link in the description and it'll take you to the webinar sign up and you can get everything there and the replay and all of that. So no worries, it's always available, and then it will post to YouTube for viewing for later as well. Okay. All right. So I've been in the testing game a while. The 5001 was my very first test that I kind of started prepping people for. It is the elementary education exam. Now, if you are taking a different elementary education exam, maybe you're taking the 5901, the 7811, the 5006, there are so many. This webinar is going to help you because they're all structured the same. There are a couple nuances that are different, but even if you're taking a different elementary education exam, this is going to help you. All right. So we're going to hop into the presentation in just a second, but I want to just go over a couple of things when it comes to this test. It's very important that you understand the structure of the teacher certification exams that you are taking. So one of the most important things you can do is go to the ETS website and download the study companion. Now, all you have to do is Google the test name and the word study companion. I'm going to show you how to do that now. Let me just pull it up here. I'm going to hide my bookmarks bar. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I am just going to go to, let me share my screen really quickly with you guys so you can see how I do this. Let's go to, hang on, let me just pull this up. Praxis 5001 Study Companion. All right, so let me go ahead and share now that it's up. There we go. Okay. Here we go. So you can see that on the screen, I have Googled the words Praxis 5001 Study Companion. Now, the first thing you're going to see is an ad for study.com and maybe something else, Mometrics, things like that. Don't go to this. This is something to sell you. You want to go to the Elementary Education Multiple Subtests by this company here, ETS, Educational Testing Services. That's who makes this exam. When you click here, you'll be taken to a PDF. All right. And in this PDF is where all the information is. Now, in my books, I break down the blueprint and put them in the book so you have them. But if you just want to have a quick overview of the structure of the exam, you can find that here in the ETS Study Companion. Now, let me open up my pages here. The most important part of this document is obviously the blueprint, which breaks everything down. And we're going to go through this in depth in just a second. But what's also really important is what we call the test specifications or content topics. And you can see that they break everything down here. All of these skills, these are all the skills you need for the reading and language arts section. Let's go to the math really quickly. This is the math. Okay, here's the math. This is the blueprint. These are the skills you need to understand for the math and how it's broken down. And again, I'm going to talk about this more in depth in just a minute. But then we have all of the skills here. This is what we call fair game in the testing industry, meaning if it is on the blueprint and test spec, it is fair game that you will see it in the test or on the test. So you want to become very familiar with this document. And some of you have, and some of you haven't, and that's okay. Also on here, you have test questions, which is great. And then they give you detailed answer explanations, which is also really good as well. One of the things I like about the new blueprints that they just put out, and this is this one here, you can see with the red, they kind of changed the look of it and everything. But you can see that they have these things here called discussion questions. And in these discussion questions, they show you kind of more critical thinking questions that you can use to kind of evaluate your studies. All right. And so one of the things that we want to be sure that we are doing is that we're going beyond just practice test questions, that we're actually thinking about this material because it's a really tough exam. And if you're just taking practice test questions, you may not be successful because you don't know what tests you're going to get. So it could ask you different types of questions on the exam, but you can see like here are the discussion questions, identify examples of mathematical vocabulary such as expression, constant term, factor, coefficient. These are all really important things to think about when you're studying for the exam. So I always like to show people the study companion because it's an amazing document. The test process is not a secret. It's very transparent. And they show you exactly what you need to know in order to pass the exam. Every large exam, standardized assessment, has a blueprint and test specification. And my number one thing I always tell people is examine that test specification and blueprint, because the test makers made that. The people who are making the test made that. And so it's really important that you understand that. The second thing that's very important to understand is that when you only take practice tests over and over again, you are assuming that you are going to get questions that are the same or similar on those practice tests on the exam, and that is not the case. The testing companies have large item banks, and inside those item banks are hundreds and hundreds of test questions for each content category in each subtest. So there are thousands of questions. And then they randomly pull from those when you go in and take a form. You'll take a form A, B, C. It just depends on how many there are. Nobody knows. That is a secret because it keeps tests secure. So rather than try to memorize a study guide practice test or a Quizlet, all of that is helpful, but you're not guaranteed that you're going to see those questions on the exam. And that's why it's so important to understand the concepts really, really well. And for the 5001, this is a huge test, so that's going to take some time. So I recommend you give yourself a couple of weeks or even longer to study for this exam, okay? Now, we have lots of resources for the 5001. I'm going to show you a couple of landing pages as we move through this presentation. But Tess just shared the ETS Study Companion link in the chat, so you can go ahead and check that out there. Thank you, Tess, so much. So I would copy that link, bookmark that link, because that's something that you're going to want to have. You can also download it to your computer. And then, of course, beyond that, you're going to want to watch videos. You're going to want to get a study guide, and then you are going to want to really practice for this exam, okay? All right, I know it's Saturday, and you guys would probably rather be relaxing, but I am thrilled that you guys are here, because I don't want you to put off these tests, because some of you only have 2 years or 3 years to complete this process before so that you can get certified. And it's really important you don't put it off. 3 years or 2 years creeps up on you very, very quickly when you are teaching. And so we want to make sure you're successful for that. Okay. Tess has also shared a link in the chat where you can see all of our products for the 5001. Let me just show you this landing page, because it really is, we just did this landing page. So you can see this has everything we offer for the 5001. We have the study guides, the online courses, obviously the free webinar, which is today, right now. This will change out to the latest webinar. And then we have some blogs that you can read about the 5001. We have these all broken up by subtests. So some of you may only need the math, or you may only need the science or social studies or whatever. You can buy them one at a time. However, very important, it's cheaper to buy the entire study guide than each individual, because each individual, you can see here, is $29.99. If you need two, you're talking $60+ when it comes to tax. So instead, you want to make sure that you just get the full study guide here. That covers everything. Now, if you want to buy the physical study guide, you can just click this Amazon button here, and it'll take you to Amazon where we have our new book. Now, one thing to see, this one does not have any reviews yet, because I just published it, I think it was 2 weeks ago, or actually last week. But if you go to see all formats here, you can see that our first edition has over 700 5-star reviews. This book has helped thousands of teachers pass their exam. But I do recommend, and you can get it from both places, if you just go here to the see all formats and editions, you click that, and you go over here to the second edition. It's $3 more, but it has over 75 more pages in it. So definitely worth it. The offer code, and Tess, if you would put the offer code in the chat in the webinar, the offer code will work on our website. It won't work on Amazon, only because Amazon sets the price, and I can't just put discounts on KDP Publishing, unfortunately. But you can get a discount on our website because you attended the webinar. It's 20% off. It brings everything down. Also, something you may want to consider if you're really struggling with this exam is the online course. And the online course comes with the study guides and the brand new study guide. So if you need, it's got tons of videos and information and visual elements. If you need that, I highly recommend the online course. And again, it's cheaper to buy the whole thing if you need two or three or more. You can actually buy two separately, and it would be, actually with the discount, it won't be, but just if you need more than one, you want to buy the entire course. Okay. All right. So now that we've gotten all that out of the way, somebody said they're using the first edition and it's amazing. Thank you so much. Yes, I love the first edition. I've learned so much about publishing these study guides, and I wanted to just update it because it is one of my older books, but it's helped thousands pass. So if you have the first edition, you're fine. You do not have to buy anything else. But if you bought the digital guide from us, if you bought the first edition digital guide, go to that email that had the download link and click it, and it'll bring you to the new edition. So it's automatically updated on our website. Okay. The physical book, obviously, if you bought that, it's the old edition, but the first edition is fine. It's wonderful. Lots of people use it. I just wanted to update. It had been a couple of years, and so now we have an updated edition. Okay, so the offer code is in there. Tess put it in there. Let's see, where is it? It's Praxis. Here it is. I'll repost it again. This is from me, but she posted it in there. Her name is Tess. She is my my colleague, and she is answering questions in the chat for you guys. Right. All right. Now that we've gotten all of that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive into the presentation here. So we are going to, let's go over here. All right. So this is the free study guide that you received when you signed up for the webinar. Okay. So this is great. If you're trying to save money and you just want to use the free resources, this plus my YouTube channel, plus some research online will get you there if you've got a solid understanding. If you need more help, and it is a big test, you want to make sure that you get some extra resources. But for now, you can go ahead and just do this free thing here. You can see I've broken it up with the blueprints here. I'm going to go over a lot of this information today, but this free study guide actually has a lot of really good information. So if you're on Facebook and you want this, just download put your name into the form on the webinar page that I put in the description, and you'll be able to download this study guide here. Now, if you want to take a look into the second edition, this is the full study guide. Remember, this is the free abbreviated study guide, and this is the full study guide. You can see that we have detailed practice test questions for every content category and every subtest. We have very detailed answer explanations. The math, let me just show you a little bit on the math. Let me scroll over here. This book is huge. It is just giant because the test is giant. But the math, we have all of these math things to think about for elementary school. You might think, well, the math, it's elementary math. Yeah, this math is difficult. Ask anyone who's taken it. There's the coordinate plane, there's proportions, there's geometry, there's probability and statistics. It is not easy. So make sure you are prepared. Okay. All right. So you can open up your free study guide here. I am also going to just work on my own presentation here, and we're going to hop right into it. And we're going to get started with the actual presentation and working through some of these practice problems so you have an understanding of what they look like on the exam. Okay. So this is the Praxis Elementary Education Multiple Subjects 5001. As you can see right here. Now, again, this is going to help you with any elementary education exam. So they all kind of assess the same things. Sometimes some might have more teaching scenarios than others, but it is very important that you have these foundational skills, or these fundamental skills, I should say, for this exam. Now, it is 4 sections, 4 separate subtests. And each of these are scored separately. So the first one is reading and language arts. The second one is math. The third is social studies. And the fourth is science. Now you have to pass all 4 in order to pass. However, you can take them separately. If you are someone who gets overwhelmed by tests, you can take them separately. I recommend taking them all at once the first time you take it, because the thing is, you might pass 1 or more, and then you only have to concentrate on 2 or 1 or something like that. So I do recommend trying to take the whole thing at once. But if you're someone who is totally overwhelmed by this, it's a 4.25 hour course, so 4 hours, 15 minutes. That's a big test. If that's too much for you, then you can separate it out. But if it's not, I would definitely take it all at once the first time. And you can see here that the reading in the language arts is the longest and it has the most questions. Now, why is that? Well, in elementary education, reading is arguably, my math teachers are going to get mad, but arguably, according to the state and according to what people want our students to do, reading and language arts is most important because it supports all other content areas. Math is still very, very important, I agree, but they really want you to have some of the foundational skills in reading down before they put you into an elementary classroom. And so this is going to be the biggest part of it, and it's very nuanced. Then you have 65 minutes for 50 mathematics questions. You have 60 minutes for 60 social studies questions and 60 minutes for 55 science questions. Now, again, these are scored separately. So once you finish, like let's say you just took the 5002 and you submitted it and you're done, you can't go back into the 5002. Like you have to move on now to mathematics. You can't go back in. So really important that you understand that. It's all computer delivered. And for the mathematics, you do get an on-screen calculator. And so we have a blog. And in fact, Tess, if you're listening, let's put that blog into the email that goes out. There's a link in the blog that takes you to the online calculator so you can learn how to use it. It's through ETS. It's their online calculator tutorial or whatever. We'll link that up in the email for you guys when it goes out after this thing here. But you do get a calculator for the math, but clicking on that calculator takes time. I would recommend, just kind of learning your math facts so you don't have to use the calculator every 5 seconds. You might need it, here and there, but I would recommend trying not to use it as much as possible, but you certainly can, right? So now let's go into the first section, which is the reading and language arts. I mentioned this is the biggest part of the exam, and we have two major content categories for this exam, which is reading and writing, speaking, and listening. Now, within these two content categories are a ton of skills. The reading part has all the foundational skills of reading, phonics, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, comprehension. It's got a lot. And so that is a big portion of the exam. And then you have writing, speaking, and listening, which encompasses all of the writing skills and then, of course, speaking and listening skills. Now, it does look like this is a bigger portion of the exam, but this reading is, it's got a lot of information. Writing, speaking, and listening considers 3 types of skills, whereas reading is 1, and it's almost half the test. So we want to make sure we focus on both of these skills. And in it, when we are talking about reading, they're talking about the foundational skills of reading here, okay? Because you are teaching elementary school students, and they really need to understand, or you really need to understand how to teach them. What are these foundational skills? So you're going to get a lot of teaching scenario questions on the reading portion of this exam. For example, a student is having trouble understanding letter sound correspondence. What skill is the student struggling with? Well, that would be phonics, because phonics is letter sound correspondence. So again, it is an introductory test in that you are not supposed to be an expert in any one of these areas, but you definitely need to know these particular things. Now, I did just do a video on YouTube, and at the end of this webinar, I will go to that, but I broke down all of the Fab 5 of reading and a lot of these foundational skills. So if you're looking for a free resource, we have that there. If you want to get the online course, I go into the foundational skills crazy in that online course. There are tons of videos, tons of practice, and I explain every single foundational skill. So no matter what test question you're asked, you are ready for that. But we have phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, which are sounds only. These have to do with sounds only. And then we have phonics, which has to do with spelling. Fluency, which has to do with reading words on the page accurately and with a pace where you can get through the passage. Of course, we have comprehension and metacognition, which are linked. You have to use your metacognition to have comprehension. Comprehension is building those pictures in your mind, synthesizing information, analyzing. These are higher order skills. These come later. Of course, you're talking about the beginning skills here in phonological awareness and phonemic awareness, and then phonics. Then we move into fluency, and then we get into comprehension and our metacognition and comprehension. and you're kind of moving through that continuum of reading, right? So let's have a look at what it might look like on the exam. So what I like to do when I'm working on a test question, and many of you might know this because you have attended lots of my webinars or seen my videos, I always work backwards. I start with the answer choices first. Why do I do this? Well, for this particular question, it's not too difficult. But when you get to questions where it's a long scenario and you have long answer choices, 9 times out of 10, if you work backwards, you can eliminate bad answer choices and zero in on good answer choices. So always start with the answer choices first. And I have a video on this too called Work Backward, and I'll link that up in the email as well. But let me write that down. We need the work backwards. And we also said the blog for calculator. I'm just making sure whatever I talk about today, I make sure I include it in the follow-up email. So right now I can't do much with the answer choices because these are just skills: phonological awareness, phonics, phonemic awareness, and structural analysis. So let's have a look at this here. When a student has awareness of phonemes in words, syllables, onset rhymes, and segments, he or she is demonstrating. Okay, so these are all skills that have to do with sounds in words. There is a little spelling here, but we're talking about phonemes. Phonemes are the individual sounds in words. And then sometimes we use syllable sounds in words, onset and rhyme segments. This is phonological awareness. This is the big skill when we talk about reading, okay? If we were just talking about phonemes in words, individual phonemes in words, like how many phonemes are in the word bat, b-at, that would be phonemic awareness, but we're kind of putting that all together with syllables, onset and rhyme. Let me show you what onset and rhyme is. Let's say you have the word track, right? The onset sound is ter. That is the consonant or consonant cluster. And ack is the vowel and consonants that follow. That is the rhyme, R-I-M-E. You will see this on the exam. And again, if you're not really schooled in reading, this might trip you up. Obviously, this is something that not most people are not like thinking about on the day-to-day, right? So that's why it's important to really study the study guide instead of just doing practice tests, because you have to understand these skills because they're going to give you questions like this that are very nuanced. And so in this case, we're not just talking about phonemes, but we're talking about, segmenting words by onset and rhyme or syllables. There is the term spelling here. In the second edition, I took that off because spelling is really related to phonics, but I have seen this question on a practice test for ETS and it included spelling. I think that was kind of an error on their part, but I left it in here so you would understand that if this was just a spelling question or letter sound correspondence, for example, if you see the word like in the word receive, do you see how this E is followed by the C is followed by the E? That's a code. This is a code-based skill to know that. It's letter, because we have the C and the E here. Sound, the C makes a S sound in this situation. Correspondence, that's phonics. But in this question, we're talking about phonemes as well. So this is actually phonological awareness. Structural analysis here is breaking up words, usually through morphology, breaking down compound words, breaking off prefixes, suffixes, and roots, things like that. That's not what's going on here. We have a variety of skills working that's focused mainly on the sounds in words, and that's why it's phonological awareness. All right, let's have a look at number 3. Now, again, I'm going to go to my answer choices and I see, again, I have skills here. One thing, here's a quick test strategy. One thing that you want to be cognizant of is when there are 2 answers in the answer choices that are similar and the test question did not ask you to identify more than one correct answer. Now, sometimes you'll get a question on the exam that says, check all that apply or identify 3 answers. You have to click more than one. And in that case, you have to answer them all correctly. You do not get partial credit. You have to actually choose all of them that would be correct. But in this case, it's just A, B, C, or D. And you can see right away by me looking at the answer choices, I can see that decoding and phonics are the same. Decoding is a phonics skill. So these 2 are most likely not my correct answers here. This is a kind of an advanced test taking skill. But if you're stuck and you see two answer choices that are too close together, they kind of mean the same thing, and you're only asked to answer one correct answer, not multiple correct answers, then I would eliminate these, or at least in your mind say those are probably not the right answer, okay? So that leads us with phonemic awareness and structural analysis, two very different skills. I'm going to continue to work backwards. I'm going to start here with these two little bullets. Teach students to break words down by individual sounds. Teach students to focus on sounds as they rhyme words. Doesn't rhyme have to do with sounds, right? So we're talking about sounds here. And I don't really even need to read this part here because I know that this is phonemic awareness. It is not structural analysis. It's not decoding, and it's not phonics. We're talking about sounds here, so it's all phonemic awareness. Notice how when we work backwards, we are in a better position to make a judgment call. Now, sometimes you'll work backwards and you won't be able to do anything. You have to go back into the question and all of that. But it does just help to look at the answer choices first on these types of exams. I've been studying them forever, and I see tons of patterns and things going on. And so just take my word for it. Working backwards works. And if you have been working backwards, let me know in the comments or in the chat if you have and how it's worked for you. And I have several videos about that. And again, I'm going to link it up in the email that goes out after this webinar. So you'll be able to see that there. All right, now, along with those types of questions, those were foundational skill questions, phonics, phonological awareness, phonemic awareness, things like that. You are going to also have to understand comprehension. That's the goal of reading instruction. And we are going to be talking about literature and informational text. Obviously, literature are things like stories. And then informational text is like your social studies textbook or important information. And so you want to make sure you understand the difference between informational and literary text and how it's important to be teaching both. That's a theme on this, that we are using both. We're using a balanced literacy approach. You're also going to need to understand text structures, text features, what it means to compare multiple texts. This is a high-level skill where students take one text, maybe it's a poem, and relate it to maybe an essay or a story, and they find similarities and differences and things like that. Very important. Also, teaching students how to relate the text to themselves. You know, we read because it makes us feel something, right? And so we want to encourage students to see themselves in text. That's why it's important to use culturally relevant material so that all students see themselves in books, making sure that we're choosing books for our library that help students understand accurate representations of history and things that have happened over the course of, the history of time. These are things that are very important as literature teachers, as English teachers. And so that's very important. And then, of course, evidence-based discussion. This is a good word on the exam, okay? When we teach even the youngest students, even students who are just beginning to read, we want to probe them to find areas in the text that support their claims. So for example, if you might ask a student and say, well, what kind of character is so-and-so in the text? And the student might say, oh, he's mean, or he's not nice, right? Okay, fair enough. What in the text led you to that assumption, or what in the text led you to that inference? And you would require the student to go back and say, well, on the third page, he says this to the bunny, and that's mean, right? It's not asking the student to cite information using the author and the page number and using APA, in-text citations, right? That's more complicated. That comes later in middle school and high school. But you're starting that skill of where in the text did you come to that information, and can you share that with me? This is part of the Common Core standards. It is a very important skill we need to teach students, because you can have as many claims as you want, but if you can't back it up with a source, it's kind of useless. And that goes for literature too. This isn't just for informational. Students will make inferences in text, and we want to encourage them to show where they got that idea. Okay? All right. So let's have a look at what a question in that area might look like. Okay, this is one of those where working backwards is really going to help us. So let's have a look at those. A, allow students to partner up and read the text with a buddy. Now, a lot of you might say this is a good practice, and it is in real life. But I want you to be cognizant of the fact that if we are talking about students who are struggling or who need interventions, partnering up isn't always the best answer because you're going to need to intervene as a teacher. I don't hate this answer choice, but I don't love it. Okay. B, reward the students with extra time in the computer lab for finishing their reading. Okay, reward. Now, do we reward students in class? Do we use extrinsic rewards like candy and cookies and extra time on the playground? Absolutely. And does it work? It works. It works until it doesn't, but it does work. You can't sustain it if you're constantly giving a student a reward. When the reward wears off, the student's motivation will also wear off. On this exam, extrinsic rewards like cookies, extra time, homework passes, things like that are typically not the correct answer because we want it to be intrinsically motivating. Okay, so this sounds to me like it might be a motivation question. I'm going to cross B off because it has an extrinsic reward. C, require the students to finish reading for homework. Homework and require are bad words on this exam. They're punitive. Do we give homework? Yes, we do, but typically on this test, homework is a bad answer choice. So I'm going to cross off C. And then we have D, allow the students to self-select books. Self-select is in the test specifications. That's why I call it a good word. From a standards aligned, another good word, of informational text. Notice this has a bunch of good words in it. Right now I know D is automatically my correct answer, but let's go ahead and check out the question first. A teacher notices a few students who are not motivated. All right, we need to motivate here. To read the current section of the informational text, what can the teacher do? Well, one of the best things you can do for motivation for reading is to allow students to self-select. Instead of telling them you have to read this right now, you're going to want to allow them to self-select books. And then, of course, we want to make sure those books are aligned to the standards. And in this case, we're talking about informational text in the question. So informational text is addressed here, making D the best answer. And then that brings us to the last portion of the reading and language arts section of the 5001. And we're talking about writing, speaking, and listening here. This is going to help you with the writing process, audience awareness, a little bit of grammar and mechanics. You might get a grammar question on this part of the exam, and of course, presentation skills. So you're going to want to really brush up on the writing process. What is the writing process for students? We have pre-writing, brainstorming. We have the drafting phase where students free write. We have the revision stage, the peer review stage, the line editing stage, the publishing stage. All of that is in the book, and it's really important that you know that. Audience awareness, audience and purpose for writing is one of the most important things we need to teach students. You're going to write differently to your grandmother than you would to the principal, right? You're going to write differently to your friend if you're writing a story than you would to maybe a government official. So we want to teach students that different audiences require different forms of writing. A little bit of grammar and mechanics in there, so brush up on that. I have it in the book. It's pretty good. It's pretty extensive in there to make sure you know all the grammar things you might see. And then, of course, we got to teach students how to present their information. Students will start to do little presentations in elementary school. So it's important that we teach them how to articulate information, speak properly, use eye contact. All of that can be done through role play, can be done through performance-based assessments, all of that. Very important for this. Let's have a look and see what this looks like. Now you can see we have a rather large question here. Again, I'm going to go straight to the answer choices. And you can see that I have, you use the term American alligator a lot. Try combining sentences to give the paragraph varied language. Okay, A looks like it's a piece of feedback, right? This looks like it's from a teacher. Try combining the sentences. I like that. And varied language when it comes to the writing section is good. We want to teach students how to use sentence variety and varied language. It makes the writing more interesting, right? The only thing is it's a little punitive. It's a little critical. There's no good stuff talked about in answer A, but I don't hate it. I'm going to keep it. B, good job. Keep up the great work. Nope, that is not feedback. Feedback is you're doing a great job in this, this, and this because you did X, Y, and Z. Just saying good job, I mean, that might be good on the playground if the student shared, right? And you might say, good job, Susie. But even better, you would say, Susie, I'm really proud of you for sharing your toy. That's showing that you respect your friends and that you're willing to, let them have a turn. Notice that I give more specific feedback there. So good job, keep up the great work. Well, how do I keep up the great work if I don't even know what the great work is? So B is not good enough. C, consider using a closing statement at the end. It's not so nice. It's pretty, uh, you know, small in terms of feedback. I don't love it. I'm going to cross off C. D, your writing does a great job in describing your knowledge about the American alligator. Consider deleting sentence 4 so it doesn't take away from your overall theme. Notice that the fourth answer choice here has a positive thing about the writing and then a consideration or a critical element at the end. D looks like it's my best answer. Let's go to the question stem here. What would be the appropriate feedback to share with the student who wrote the paragraph above? Well, notice I don't even need to read the paragraph above. I can go with D because D is going to be the most appropriate feedback. Now, if this test question had more specifics about like combining sentences more specifically or grammar, that they could turn this into a grammar. And in the book, I do use this paragraph here to do, I think, 3 or 4 questions, and some of them have to do with grammar. You will have to read this. But notice by working backwards and just going with the question stem right here, I didn't have to get lost in the actual paragraph. If you started here and read here and then read all the way down and then looked at the answer choices, you're wasting time and you might have to go back and reread what this question stem says. So start with the answer choices first, and it's going to help you. Remember, with feedback on student writing, we always want to be positive, then offer an area where they can improve. Make sure it is specific and meaningful. B is nice, but it's not specific and meaningful. Good job is a nice thing to say to somebody, but it's not specific and meaningful. Great. All right, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing here for a minute and just take some questions. We're going to get into math in just a second. While I'm listening, I'm bookmarking these pages now. Very good. Let me just scroll down. There's a lot of questions. I've decided to take the subtest themselves. A couple people have decided to take the subtest separately. That's really, really good. I wish I could do the one I have the most trouble with first and then get that first one out of the way, but unfortunately the ETS computer test won't let you skip around. Good thing, Ashlyn. Thank you for talking about that. You do have to take the subtests in order. So Ashlyn is saying she finds math to be the hardest and she wishes she could just take the math first and get it out of the way, but you can't. You have to go through the reading and language arts. Once you're done, then you move to the math, then you move to the social, then you move to the science. It's just the way it works. But, you can do it. And even if you don't get the math the first time, maybe you pass the English and the language arts, the science and the social studies. And then the next time around, you take the math, you only have to focus on the math. That would be really good too. Or you might get all 4. Here's the thing, guys. If you're finding that this test is hard and you haven't been successful the first or second time you've taken it, please understand that fewer than 50% of people pass their teacher certification exams the first time they ever take them. These are not easy exams. And don't listen to the noise online that people are like, oh, teachers can't pass the test. I'd like to have any one of those people who have negative things to say online take any one of these exams and they will fail miserably. This is a tough exam. You have to take the time to study for it. And if you get 2 out of the 4, that's a win. If you get 1 out of the 4, that's a win. And also, if you don't get any, it's still a win because you saw the exam and you kind of now have an understanding of what you need to work on. So try to just go easy on yourself. This is a big one and just take it one step at a time. Yes, the cost is very expensive. Unfortunately, there are a couple of states. New Jersey is waiving certification fees. So if you're in New Jersey, you might want to check that out. Some states are waiving the fees because there's a teacher shortage and they know like they need to do something for teachers. Somebody is talking about that they are an English language learner. If you're an English language learner taking this test, if English is your second language, not your first, you may be able to apply for accommodations. So you go to the ETS website or you can Google Praxis accommodations and it'll take you to the accommodations page where you can see how you apply for them. Okay. All right, let's go into the math section. Math is what Ashlyn's having trouble with, so we will take a look at that. Now, I can't go through everything, but our math online course is awesome. And of course, the new book has a lot of good stuff, and the first edition has a lot of good stuff as well. So the math is broken up by 3 content categories: numbers and operations, algebraic thinking, and geometry, measurement, data, statistics, and probability. Now, the biggest one is numbers and operations, because this encompasses a lot of different skills. You are going to have to understand place value, proportions, percents, percent of change. There's just a lot going on in numbers and operations. Of course, then you have algebraic thinking, and then geometry, measurement, data, probability, and statistics is all rolled up into one. The math on this test is not easy. It is tough. There's the coordinate plane. There's some pretty tough geometry questions in here. There's some rather difficult algebra questions as well. And so I've even seen some slope intercept on some of the practice tests. So this is hard. You're going to have to brush up. If you haven't used some of these math skills in a while, you're definitely going to want to think about that. Let's talk about numbers and operations. So of course, we talked about this place value. You got to understand the tens place, the hundreds place, the tenths or the hundredths place, the tenths place, and the difference, and how far away on the number line are they. You're going to have to brush off those PEMDAS skills, order of operations. Remember, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, and division. They can both go, it depends on what order they go in the problem, but they are interchangeable, but they definitely go before addition and subtraction. You're going to need to understand exponents. Fractions. Some people never got fractions in school. They just kind of skipped through it and were able to move on with their lives. Fractions will come up on this exam. Decimals, percents, and proportions. Proportions are a big one. You can use proportions to solve lots of the math problems on this test, and I'm going to go through that in one of the questions here, okay? All right, let's have a look. This is a proportion question. So this is part of the numbers and operations section of the book. All right. So with math, I always still work backwards because you might be able to eliminate something. But when I do math, I just quickly look at the answer choices. I just want to see what they're expecting me to do, because sometimes there will be an equation in the answer choices, right? So I'm not looking for an actual answer. I'm actually looking to write an equation. And I've done it sometimes where I haven't worked backwards and I'm trying to work out the problem, and I'm going around and around in circles, and I realize the answer choices are algebraic equations. I wasn't supposed to work out the problem. I was supposed to write an equation. So that's why I like to glance at the answer choices just to know, okay, in this case, I'm looking for an actual solve on this problem. All right, let's have a look then now at the question. Ryan works at a sandwich shop and can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. At this rate, how many sandwiches can he make in a 4-hour shift? Okay, this is a proportion question. You will see lots of questions like this on the exam. One way to figure out if it's a proportion is that you are given 3 things and you're being asked to show the 4th thing, which is how many sandwiches. Notice I have 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. How many sandwiches can I do in a 4-hour shift? Notice I've gotten 3 out of the 4 things I need here. When you have that, you want to set up a proportion, which is 2 fractions equal to one another. And you want to make this what I like to call matchy-matchy. And you'll see this on our videos on YouTube. Whatever you put on the top, it has to be on the top on both sides. And whatever you put on the bottom has to be on the bottom in both sides. In this case, I want to do sandwiches over minutes equals sandwiches over minutes. All right. I'm not going to do minutes over sandwiches equals sandwiches over minutes. Got to be matchy-matchy. Sandwiches on the top, minutes on the bottom. On the other side, sandwiches on the top, minutes on the bottom. Well, I have this many sandwiches here, 35. I can make 35 sandwiches in 50 minutes. How many sandwiches, I don't know, becomes my X in 4 hours. Now, in this case, I would take 4 times 60 to get my minutes, because this is in hours here, and they'll do this. This is a mini conversion inside of the word problem. So I would convert to minutes here, but you could also convert this 50 here to hours. You could make sandwiches over hours equals sandwiches over hours, or, in this case, sandwiches over time equals sandwiches over time. But I don't like, that would turn this 50 into a decimal, and I don't want to deal with decimals. And I know 4 times 60 is 240 right off the top of my head here, okay? Now what we're going to do is we're going to cross multiply and solve. Let me delete this little arrow here. Okay, we are going to cross multiply and solve. And so this is where that on-screen calculator might become handy. 240 times 35, and we get 800, or I'm sorry, not 800, 8,400. Okay, so we're going to cross multiply. That's my eraser. Sorry about that. I had my eraser on. We are going to cross multiply here. 35 times 240, and we get 8,400 equals, and then we cross multiply here, 50x. Now I know because this ends in zeros that this is going to be a clean division problem, and that's why all of my answer choices are non-decimals. They're just straight up answers. And when I divide, well, let me do the whole thing here. To isolate this x here, to make it x equals, I'm going to divide by 50, canceling this out, divide by 50, canceling this out. And when I divide 8,400 by 50, I get 168. This guy here, Ryan, can make 168 sandwiches in a 4-hour shift, okay? So lots of different math skills going on there. This is why the math is hard. Proportions, set them up, set them equal to one another. Same elements on the top on both sides, same elements on the bottom on both sides, set them equal, cross multiply, and solve. Now, another version you might be, another thing you might be thinking about here is algebraic thinking. This is going to be your algebra, and some of you hated algebra in school. So we're going to do expressions versus equations. Just a quick tip, equations have an equal sign, expressions don't. Linear relationship, formulas for unknown quantities, again with proportions. And like, if you were to look at this math problem here, this isn't just a number sense problem. This is an algebra problem as well, because we used algebra to solve. And so that's why the test can be so complicated in the math portion, is because in a word problem, they can be assessing several different skills. And then we have verbal statements, making that into an algebra problem. I just did a video on my Facebook page about this. If you want to go there and check it out, I think it's on my YouTube channel as well, maybe not. I take in a word problem and turn it into an algebraic equation, and that's tough to do sometimes. Let's have a look at what a question might look like on this exam. So here's a little algebra here for you. You can see we got variables going on. I got an exponent, I've got negatives, and it's saying evaluate the equation for B. Now, it says B is -4. So I'm going to plug in -4 everywhere where I see a B. But this is also going to be a PEMDAS situation. I need to keep my negatives and my orders of operation proper here. So let's go ahead and write it out with 4 in place of anything where I see a B. So don't forget my negative here, and I'm going to just put parentheses -4. Be careful. To the second power minus, 3. Sorry, I gotta put my 4 in there. And everywhere, I saw a B, I'm putting in a -4. Now, when we say parentheses in PEMDAS, we're talking about something like this inside of parentheses, okay? It's an operation inside of parentheses. In this case, these parentheses are just keeping the negatives in check here. So we're going to go to, if we're going to PEMDAS, so this is not just algebra. We're talking about order of operations here, and we're talking about algebra as well. So we have 2 skills being assessed here. What I'm going to do is do my exponent first. Now, notice I have 2 negatives here. They do this all the time. They want you to get tripped up on the negative. So I have -4 to the second power, which is -4 times -4, which is going to be a positive 16. But remember, and I'm going through the whole entire process. Every time I do a math problem online, people are like, you could just do this. I know I could just do that. But most people who are looking at my videos are struggling in math. So I don't want to just do anything. I want to make sure you could see the math, okay? So I'm going to bring everything down, and then I'm going to do this here. I have -3 times -4. Be careful. This is a package deal here. You got to distribute that to the -4. So in this case, I can remove the parentheses -16, and -3 times -4 is a positive 12, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And in this case, -16 plus 12 is a -4. And you can see the answer is B here. Now, if you struggle with your negatives and stuff like that, the calculator can help you. If you put in the negative in the calculator, you can also visualize a number line. If I'm at negative 16 and I only go up 12, I'm still in the negatives. I haven't hit 0 or 1 yet. So I'm still at the -4 there. And that's what that might look like on the exam. Remember, for the math, for the 5001, you are not going to be asked teaching questions. You're just going to have to do the math. For other elementary education exams like the 7811, the 5008, or the 7813, I should say, and the 5008, you will be required to kind of understand this math and then apply it to teaching, which is a little bit more complicated. But in this particular test, you just have to do the math. You don't have to figure out the student issue or anything like that. All right, now the next part, the last part, is geometry, measurement, and data probability and statistics. You're going to have to evaluate 1, 2, 3-dimensional figures, perimeter, area, volume, and circumference. So area of a circle, those types of things, pi, radius, that kind of stuff. So if you haven't done that in years, many of us haven't, you're going to have to brush up on it. Units of measure, cups, gallons, things like that. Central tendency. There's not a ton of central tendency, but I put it in the book because I just want to make sure you're covered on it. It's not explicitly stated in the specs, but it is part of measurement. And so I put it in there to make sure you know. Mean, median, and mode. You're going to have to read charts, tables, and graphs. And then, of course, probability and proportions are part of this as well. You'll have proportions when it comes to geometry, evaluating figures, setting them equal to one another. So very important there. Let's have a look and see what this might look like on the test. And this is one of those tricky questions that's not so tricky. You can see I have fractions here, all right? So I might be thinking, oh, this is a fraction problem. It is, because it's a probability problem, and probability is fractions. But let me show you what you do when you have a situation like this. A six-sided cube, as soon as you see a six-sided cube with numbers represented with dots, it's a die. It's a die, so they're rolling the die. It's a probability question. So we're talking about one die that I'm rolling. If the cube is rolled 4 times and a 5 is rolled each time, what is the probability of the cube landing on a 5 for the 6th time? Now you might be like, oh my God, how do I figure this out? Any roll is only, its probability is 1/6. That's it. Remember that for the test. If you have one die and you're rolling it, the probability of rolling a 3 is 1 out of 6. A probability of rolling a 1 is 1 out of 6. A probability of rolling a 5 is 1 out of 6, because you're looking for one number out of the 6 numbers that you have on the die. It doesn't matter how many times you rolled a 5. That doesn't give you a better probability of rolling another 5. You still have a 1 out of 6 chances of rolling a 5. You will see a question like this on the test. Remember, it's 1/6. Don't get it all screwed up. It's just 1/6. Let's have a look at a geometry question. So I have, what is the perimeter of a square? There's always going to be keywords in here, with an area of 45 square inches. All right, so area is for a square is base times height, right? Area of a rectangle is base times height. But area of a square is important because all the sides are equal, which means I need to take the square root of 49, or if you wanted to just visualize it in your head, you could say like base times height here, right, for the area. And if they're both the same, I need both the same number that goes into 49, right? That's kind of like the way I would think about it in my head. Or you could just take the square root of 49 and you would get 7, because 7 times 7 is 49, right? Well, we have a square here. So all of the sides are 7 in this case. And so if we're looking at the perimeter, we're adding up all the sides. So 7 times 4, or 7 plus 7 plus 7 plus 7, is 28 inches, D. All right. All right. Now, I'm not going over every single question in the study guide because we would be here all day, but there is more stuff happening there. Let me go into my questions here. I would know how to set it up, but I didn't have the calculator. Okay. Yeah, people are just doing the math here. This is the part I messed up on. Yes, lots of people mess up. All right. Thank you, Kathleen. I watched your video from the last webinar last night. Awesome. For the digital download, once purchased, can I download it onto a platform I'm using like a laptop? Oh, yes. If you buy our digital book, you can save it to your computer. It's in a PDF. And if you have PDF tools, you can highlight and take notes in it as well. So you can download that to your computer. It's your document. I don't have it locked down on a thing. I should, but it's easier for people to use when you can put it in a PDF, and you can even extract pages and just print the practice test if you want to. So yes, once you buy the digital guide, it's yours. You just put it on your computer and you can print it, whatever you want. We do ask that you do not share it because it is copyrighted information. It is for you only, but you can definitely save it to your computer, iPad, whatever you want. All right. All right, so that covers the math. That barely scratches the surface of the math. Let's go ahead and jump into social studies and science, and then I'm going to take some questions. I really wanted to have you guys out of here in an hour, but this is a big test, so just bear with me. I'm going to get you out of here, and you can go sit by the pool in just a second, okay? All right, it's hot here in Florida. We need the pool. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get into social studies. Now, this can be complex because how long has it been since you really looked at geography? How long has it been since you thought about world history and ancient civilizations? Probably not since you were in elementary or middle school or high school, right? And some of you are career changers, meaning you got a degree in something else. You started your career in something else, and now you're trying to be a teacher. So you're going to need to brush up on this. It's going to talk about government, U.S. history, civics. There's a little bit of civics in there. You've got geography, anthropology, and sociology. It's more geography heavy. You'll have a little bit of anthropology and sociology about culture and things like that, but typically it's on the geography side. Then you have world history and econ. It's not an easy portion, and you wouldn't believe some of the econ that students are studying in elementary, which I think is great because it's an important skill, but nonetheless, you got to brush up on it. And this is more of a memorization of topics, whereas the language arts and the reading is more of teaching scenarios. The math is definitely your math skills. So you can't really memorize with those. The social studies and the science is a lot of memorization. It's remembering these things that are just facts, and you have to think about those. Notice that the biggest portion of the exam is the U.S. history. A lot about the three branches of government, a lot about the colonies, a lot about, the beginning of U.S. history and European exploration to the Americas. So I beefed up that section as well in my book, my new book. So, but if you have the old book, it's fine. Just make sure you're kind of making note cards for this section and remembering some of these things. Remember, you're going to get on this test and there's going to be a rando question that's not in my study guide. I mean, they could ask you anything, but if you kind of understand timelines and you understand the major themes, you can usually discern the right answer, or at least narrow it down to 50-50, which will help you, right? So when we talk about U.S. history, we're talking about European exploration, the American Revolution. There's a lot on the American Revolution, major events, Civil War, wayward expansion or westward expansion, manifest destiny. Remember, the colonists thought it was their God-given destiny to go west and conquer the land and bring, us out to California and all of that. Key documents, definitely going to want to know: Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Federalist Papers. That should not say Feudalist Papers. That should say the Federalist Papers. Sorry about that. Branches of government, very important. And then citizen responsibilities. This is a big part now in elementary school. There's a lot of civics instruction, so we want to make sure we are brushed up on that. Let's have a look at what the question like this would look like. This is number 2 on page 16 of your study guide. Which of the following describes the duty of the judicial branch of the U.S. government? Now, really important, the judicial branch of the U.S. government interprets the laws, okay? So makes laws is the legislative branch, all right? Makes laws is the legislative branch. Remember, I'm Gen X, so we used to have that video, How a Bill Becomes a Law, and it goes through all the things. You should look it up on YouTube. It's actually really good. You could show it to your students. But that is happening in the legislative branch. Implementing policy is kind of an outlier here, and enforces laws. You may be inclined to choose that, but it's really interpreting the law. Think about it. When the legislative branch makes a law, let's just say the Florida Senate, there's been a lot of controversy on this. The Florida Senate and the Florida legislative branch, I should say, as a whole, has passed some pretty interesting laws that a lot of people are having a hard time with. And so some of those laws will be bumped to the Supreme Court, the state Supreme Court first, right? And what the state Supreme Court will do is interpret if those laws are constitutional or not. That's one of the biggest things. Notice that we've had some recent laws struck down by the federal Supreme Court, right? they interpret what's going on with the law and determine if it's constitutional law. Even your, district court or county court or circuit court, I should say, like, let's say you got in trouble and you're in front of the judge is interpreting the law and what law you broke. You might think, oh, they're enforcing the law, but they're really interpreting the law and whether or not the prosecutor has a case. Obviously, the jury, finds you, if you go to trial, the jury finds you guilty and all of that. But what the judicial branch is doing is interpreting, is the law constitutional? Does the prosecutor have a case, or do the people have a case to say that the law is unconstitutional? So that is what the judicial branch does. And another thing it's called is judicial review. And that's a big part of the judicial branch of government. All right, let's have a look at what geography, anthropology, and sociology have. We've got world geography and concepts, things like, an isthmus and a volcano and what those are, and what an island versus a peninsula, those things that we may not have brushed up on in a while. We have physical and human systems. So we're talking about not just the world and its physical systems, but also how humans interact with it. There is a little bit on cultures and, of course, people, migration, and settlements. This is very important. And this leads into economics, because people have economics across different cultures and countries. But in this case, we're thinking about it more in terms of settling and things like that. Let's have a look at what a question might look like in this regard. So if I go to my answer choices first, I can see intensive farming, sustenance farming, pastoral farming, and extensive farming. Really, the only two that are real answers are these two here, just going because I know this, I wrote it. So let's go ahead and have a look at the question. Which of the following terms is used to describe agriculture, where large parcels of land are cultivated using machinery rather than manual labor? Okay, let's say you didn't know anything about farming. You skipped that part in the study guide, or you haven't heard about that since you were in grade school. Think about large. What is large? Large is extensive, right? If we look at this particular question, we are thinking about large pieces of land with plows or big pieces of machinery. That's extensive, right? I'm trying to reach lots of land, process tons of crops or harvest tons of crops, I should say, all at once, okay? Intensive farming is when we have a small piece of land and we are intensively farming on that land, trying to get the most out of the land, right? Extensive farming is, I need to get all this land cultivated. I need to make sure my crops are planted, and then I need to make sure they're all harvested. This is really what we use now, because we have to feed so many people. Although this is making a comeback, intensive farming is still used all over the world and in the United States. But in this case, we're talking about large parcels of land, and this is extensive farming. Okay. Now let's have a look at world history and economics. You're going to have to know those ancient civilizations: Greece, Roman Empire, Mesopotamia, all of these ancient civilizations, very important there. Developments in the 20th century. They haven't yet updated the specs for the 21st century. But it is the 20th century, things like the Cold War, Vietnam, the space race, stuff like that. The 20th century was rather big one in terms of advancements. So really important, those major timelines there. And I have a lot of timelines in the book. Cross-cultural comparison. So you're going to be looking at different governments, types in different countries and different areas. Basic econ, supply and demand, scarcity, choice, opportunity cost, things like that. And then, of course, populations, resource, and impact. How does all this matter when it comes to economics? Let's have a look at a question here. Here is something from the 21st century. Which of the following strategies was used during the Cold War to stop the spread of communism? Now, again, you might not have come up with it. You may not have studied this, right? But there's always something you can go by. I'm telling you, they know this is a beginning teacher test. If we're talking about stop the spread of communism, that is containment. First of all, the Cold War, the United States anyways, this could be argued. In a traditional sense, the United States was past colonialism, even though many people would think that we are still colonizing many places. In theory, we're not in colonialism at the time of the Cold War. The Cold War started in the 1960s, maybe 1950s. Don't come at me. Social studies people, they're very serious about their history. Anyways, it started during the space race. We were trying to beat Russia to space. The Bay of Pigs. No bombs were thrown. That's why they called it the Cold War. And we're technically still in a Cold War with Russia. We got out of it momentarily in the 80s and 90s. Then we jumped back in. Putin, what's going on there. So the Cold War is a war between the United States and Russia. And no bombs were thrown, but there was a lot of competition and there was a lot of shade. We were throwing a lot of shade at them and they were throwing a lot of shade at us. And so one of the things about it is that we didn't want, the leaders in the American government did not want communism to spread across the world. It was like, they called it the Red Scare, McCarthyism. They thought if one country was communist, they would get all these countries to go communist, and communist was like, and still is, a very bad word, right? And so we wanted to stop the spread of communism at all costs. And so this was called containment. Started with Truman, and then, of course, became a big thing where they rounded up college professors and teachers and things like that and called them communists. Kind of mirrors what's happening now, but we won't get into that. Let's talk about science. All right, so science subtest here. We have 3 major content categories for the science, and all science tests do this: earth, space, life, and physical. On all elementary education exams, and really on all major tests, you have earth, space, life science, and physical. These are the main disciplines of science, I should say. Sorry, falling over my words. Earth science has to do with the crust of the earth, mountains, rivers, water cycle, biodiversity, things like that. Biodiversity is about life science, but it starts with earth science because the water cycle and all that supports life. Also, sun, moon, planets, asteroids, comets, stars, all of that is earth science, okay? Galaxies. Then we get into life science. We're talking about the tiniest form of life, which is the cell, and then all the cell parts. You're also going to need to learn about prokaryotic cells versus eukaryotic cells. You might not have even heard those words in 20, 30 years, so you're going to need to brush up on that. And then ecosystems, zooming out from the cell for zooming out from the cell, we're talking about organisms, and then ecosystems, and then, phylum, species, genus, all of those, taxonomies, food webs, food pyramids, energy pyramids, things like that. So it's all there. That's life science. And then physical science is all about physics and chem. So physical science are going to be things like atoms, elements, the pH scale, machines, right? Pulleys, levers, things like that. Lightning, electricity, waves, all kinds of stuff. So those are the 3 types of science categories you're going to have. And we definitely brush up on this. And this is also kind of a memorization game with this one. The social studies and science is memorization. Again, I just went over this: earth science, earth, moon, sun, earth systems, earth spheres, biosphere, lithosphere, things like that, the crust. And remember, really important on the science, if you do get a teaching question, move towards those inquiry-based questions where students are interacting with science rather than just reading about science. We want students to be doing science, not just reading it in a textbook somewhere. Okay, let's have a look at what a question might look like. So this is an earth science question. Where are Earth's aquifers located? Now, a couple of things here. I can cross off C and D right away because in the Earth's core, we would never get any water. You know how far the Earth's core is? And there is no water in there. It's all nickel and oh God, I'd have to look at my chart, but there's no water there. And also the Earth's mantle. It's too deep. So that leaves me with A and B. Now, bedrock here is a tricky one because if you are thinking about aquifers or the water table, you're thinking about how it's close to bedrock, but it's not beneath the bedrock. It's beneath the Earth's crust right before the bedrock. The bedrock is like big rocks. You have to kind of frack or they call it fracture to get through it. The water table is below the crust and right above the bedrock. where the aquifers are, where the water table is. So that's going to be A. And again, how would you know that unless you know a lot about water tables, or if you got to study the study guide or find these questions on Quizlet or something like that. Another memorization situation there. And I have an actual diagram in my book about that. Now let's talk about life science again, cell theory, parts of a cell, human systems, right? We have cell structures, organs, organ systems, and the organism as a whole, interdependence, whether something is a predator or if they are a predatory relationship, or if they have a mutual relationship or a communal relationship, things like that. That's going to be really important there. That has to do with organisms and ecosystems. Life cycles of butterflies and frogs and things like that. You probably haven't thought of that in a while. And again, inquiry, very, very important. Let's have a look at what a test question might look like on this. Oh gosh, if I'm looking at the answer choices, I can see prophase, metaphase, anaphase, telophase. You may not have seen this since high school. Let's have a look at the question. During this stage of mitosis, chromosomes line up in the middle of the cell and spindle fibers attached to the center of the chromosome. So this is when I taught biology, so this one's easy for me, but it's when a cell is about to split. All cells split. Remember, cells come from pre-existing cells. They either split through mitosis or meiosis in sex cells. So when a cell splits, the chromosomes have to line up in the middle so that they're split properly. You got to have half and half in each cell. So this is the metaphase. And I always say meta goes with middle. That's how I remember it there. And again, you're going to have to brush up on these skills, okay? Let's talk physical science. We have physical versus chemical changes. You will definitely be asked a question on that. Forces of motion, electricity, forms of energy. Is it electromagnetic energy? Is it kinetic energy? Is it potential energy? That's all really important. Machines, lever, pulley, wedge, and others. I just added a table in my book with that. And then, of course, again, inquiry. We are doing science, not just reading about science. Let's have a look at a test question there. At what point on the graphic below is potential energy the highest? Well, potential energy is the highest at A. It's just like if I were to throw this pencil or drop this pencil from the ground, or not from the ground, from up here to the ground. If I drop it from here, it has more potential energy than if I'm holding it just above the ground. So potential energy is where the object is before it is released. For a swing, if this were a swing and I pulled the swing all the way up to the top before I release the swing, it's highest the higher I pull it up and release it, right? If I only pull it to here, and you can't really see me, but if I only pull it to right here, it has potential energy, but not as much as if I pull it to here. So in this case, A has the highest potential energy. And if it asked you which one has the highest kinetic energy, that would be D. That's where it's at the bottom. It's picked up all its speed. It's moving down the hill. D would be highest kinetic. A is highest potential. All right. Let me go ahead and take some questions here. All right, so that's the end of my presentation. Again, we just scratched the surface. We have a lot of information for this test. Let me go ahead and check it out. Any questions we have here? All right, let me just go over my YouTube channel really quickly if you're looking for free resources, okay? Where are you, YouTube? Here you are. So on my YouTube channel here, I have tons of videos, okay? You can go into playlists and check out all the different playlists. I have tons of on reading. I have a teaching reading playlist and all of that. I have the 5001. I have tons of information there. Social studies playlists, things like that. One playlist that will help you tremendously is, let me find it. Where is it? It's going to be the, here it is. The 7811. So I did a series, let me put this here. I did a series of videos for the 7811, which is not 5001, but it's the same. It's an elementary education test with 4 subtests: ELA, math, science, and social studies. Okay. So these are all videos here on those different things. So definitely check that out. You got to mix and match a little bit. Another really good playlist that I have on YouTube is my teaching reading playlist. This one right here. This is that foundational skills video I was telling you about. I'll link that in the email as well. I know, Tess, you're listening to me, so you're probably hearing that. I need to link the foundational skills video. This is the one on phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, but anything that has to do with teaching reading, even if it's for the teaching reading test, it's going to help you with the 5002. Okay. They all assess the same things. If you look at the specs, it's all the same. This test strategy, definitely worth a watch. Tons of important strategy there that worked really, really well for this test. And then I have lots more. So make sure you check those out. I do a lot of shorts. I did one on assessments here. All of these shorts are on teacher assessments, criterion reference, norm reference, things like that. Okay. Now, beyond that, I have, if you like a shorter stuff, I have TikTok. I have tons of video on TikTok where I have shorter videos. Definitely follow me on TikTok. I love this medium. I've been using it a lot to do. I have some math questions in here that I did that's related to the 5001, these first three here. So that'll help. And then I have Instagram, and whatever I post on TikTok, I usually post on Instagram. So if you prefer Instagram, you can see my Instagram here. Okay. And then finally, Facebook. Lots of people like to see us on Facebook. You can see that all of my webinars are there. I am live on Facebook right now. We share everything on Facebook. Facebook is our biggest, well, actually YouTube is our biggest platform, but Facebook is second. So if you prefer Facebook, we are there, and we have a group. Let me find that group. Groups. We have this group here, Teacher Certification Exam Help. If you want to, and I will share this in the chat here it is. That Facebook group, I just put it in the chat for you guys. That Facebook group, we share different things. You can see people are sharing their experiences. You can go in here and ask questions. I post in here all the time. People give their insights. Really great to have some help there. Okay. Now, beyond that, remember that we do have programs for the Praxis Elementary Education. We have the online course, which is awesome. Use that offer code that we put in the follow-up email. It's in the email you got already, and we have it in the chat. So be sure to use that offer code. Also, if you want more information just on this exam, you can go to our programs here and click Praxis 5001. This thing we just built out these huge landing pages. Look how much information is here. And of course, the webinar is there. If you put your name in, you'll get the replay because it's about to be over. And then I have these blogs here. If you go to this 5001 overview, then I have more intense blogs. And then I have a blog just for the reading and language arts that goes into detail just for that. I have a blog for the math, talk about all of that. So I've really built up these landing pages. This is more free content for you to understand the scoring, the information you need, and all of that. Okay. I believe that is everything. Any other questions? What is the best when working out past my teaching license? I don't know what that means. If I got above a 75% right on my practice test, am I ready? Yes, you are. I believe that a 75% is a good indication that you are ready to take the exam. You do not need 100 on this test. You need, honestly, in some cases, a high D. You can get a D, right? So think about that. You don't need an 80, a 90. I like to shoot for a 75 in practice because that means you do have it. I wouldn't do it any lower than that. So yeah, I would say you're ready if it's consistent. If you didn't just guess and get them right, make sure you're looking at those answer explanations so you understand why you got it right, why you got it wrong, really analyze that. Is the reading section on 5001 similar to teaching reading exam? Yes. So the 5001 is not as nuanced as the teaching reading because the teaching reading test is totally about teaching reading, okay? But they both do the same thing. So you might have our teaching reading study guide or the 5002 study guide. You're going to see a lot of overlap, but the 5205, the teaching reading, is much more specific. They really, really get into the phonological awareness continuum, the phonemic awareness continuum, things like that. But yes, and the reading has a writing section. So the Praxis Teaching Reading 5205, which is a different test, that is a writing section. Make sure you go to my YouTube channel. I have lots of writing videos on that. Okay. I also have an online course for that. So go to my programs on my website. We have an online course. What's the best for reading 5002? I would say, obviously, my study guide. And if you really want, I would get the online course. It has the videos you need, the extra practice. I would definitely get the online course if you're struggling. It comes with the study guide. You do not need to buy both. You just buy the online course and you get the download inside the course. You can save it to your computer. So don't do both. Just get the course if you're buying the course. If you don't want to buy the course, just get the study guide, either in digital form or physical on Amazon. I heard that there's a lot of quotes and having to know who said what. Any suggestions on this? You might. Okay, listen. When people take an exam and something challenged them, they will often say to you, it was all quotes. Maybe they're talking about the social studies. They're probably talking about a speech or something like that, right? 9 times out of 10, there were only maybe 2 to 3 questions on that. But because it was difficult, it's the thing they remember. And so, and I know this because I've been studying tests for a long time, and people will say, it was all this. And I know it's not because I've been studying the exam, but it feels that way because that's the thing that challenged them the most. So you might get some quotes on the exam, but typically it's going to come from like the Gettysburg Address, maybe something that Truman said, maybe something that Reagan said, tear down that wall. These are Kennedy's speeches. They're all in my book, but there might be a question or even 2 that is a specific quote that you don't know. That's okay. You can guess and move on. It's not going to be all quotes. I promise you. What is the Facebook group? Again, if you scroll up, Tess already got it. She put it in there. Thanks, Tess. I got a 76 on the practice test and a 78 in your book. Okay, you're ready, Brianna. Take it. I'm working on my teaching licensure exam in the state of Illinois. It covers all elementary subjects. What would you recommend to me? The Illinois test is very similar to this test. So if you look at the specs and they're similar, you can use our program for it because they all cover the same thing. I'm talking specifically today about the Praxis, but most elementary ed tests are like this test. So if your test is more focused on the teaching scenarios, I would get the 7811 book, because that has more teaching scenarios like in math and social studies and science. But if yours is just straight up like this one, you can get this test. You're going to have a look. If you email us, we can do a little analysis for you to see which one it aligns to best. But typically, this book will help you with pretty much any elementary ed exam. Many of your YouTubes already helped me out, but would there be anything else in more detail? Yes, beyond the YouTube videos, my online course is much more detailed. So if you like the free stuff, but you need more, I would either get the study guide or the online course, and don't forget to use the offer code. How many constructed response essay questions? None on this test, Manuel. No constructed response on this test. Straight up multiple choice. Okay, so you're lucky. Just got to take that multiple choice. Okay. How about Tennessee tests? Okay, if you guys want to figure out what test you have to take, you need to go to your State Department of Education website, but you can also Google. I'm going to share one more screen before we leave today. Hang on, let me Google it real quick first because it won't let me share. Praxis by state. Okay, let me share. Hang on. If you want to figure out what test you have to take, you're going to Google Praxis by state, and you're going to see this here that pops up, state requirements, okay? You're going to click it. When you do, it will take you to this area on the ETS website, and you can then, you see I'm in state requirements here, you can then choose your state. So somebody just asked for Tennessee. I'm going to click Tennessee and then search. When I do, this is just for certification. They tell you all about certification, which is really important. But what you want to click, it's kind of hidden on the new website, licensure requirements right here in the middle. Click it. When you do, you can see that they require you to take the PLT, which I have a webinar for that I've already done. We've gone to, we've got it on my webinars page, and I have products for all of these. And then let's say you want to be an elementary education teacher. You click that and look there. You need the 5001, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You need this test that I'm doing today. So you need the elementary education, and you have to take the teaching reading, which I also have a program for. So they're hitting you hard with the reading because you got to take it here with the 5002, and you have to take the teaching reading elementary exam. But you're so lucky because I have programs for them both. Let me go back. Our programs, you can see 5001. You're going to get this link. It's in the chat, but I'll also send it in an email. Here it is here. And then I also have a program for the 5205. I have an online course and I have a book. All my online courses come with the study guide. So don't buy both when you buy the online course. You get it when you buy the online course. It's complete prep. So there's a link in there. And let me just show you what it looks like so you can see what the online course looks like. I got to just get here. All right, let's go here. All right, I'm sharing this one instead. Here we go. All right, so this is what it's going to look like in your portal. When you log in and you get sent to our portal, you can see that this is over here on the right-hand side. I have elementary ed. I have 5002, 5003, 5004, and then 5005. Notice that in the first module, you have the new book and you have a download here. You just click this download link and it'll take you to the study guide in a PDF. You save it to your computer, okay? Now, beyond that, let's just have a look at 5003. Some of you struggle with math, so I'll just show you this. You can see that this is the whole course. I mean, there's so much information here. Lots of videos of me explaining different things. All of these diagrams, extra practice in here, just all kinds of things for you to do, different elements, visual elements, things like that. If you're someone who learns in a visual way, the online courses are the way to go. All right, now let me go here. I have the new Praxis teaching reading. If you're looking for teaching reading, this is my latest course. I love it. We have the Praxis teaching reading guide, but then what I do here is it's a little bit different than the 5001. It's a smaller test. I have the content overview with a video. Then I have a quiz. Then I have an explanation for the quiz. And I do that for all the content categories. That one's set up a little bit differently, okay? The 5001 is going to take you through all 4 subtests, and it is extensive. It's going to take time to get through. And I even have the post-test. These are in the study guide as well, but I have it in online form so you can get used to taking it on the computer. So if that's something you want to do there, okay? All right, I highly recommend the online course. It's got everything. All right, guys, listen, it's Saturday. You want to go in the pool. It's hot out there. So I'm going to let you go. Somebody asked about the offer code. The offer code works for the online course. So grab that offer code. It will apply to anything on my website. So if you want to use it for the teaching reading, you can use it for the teaching reading. Once you have that offer code, you can use it for anything, okay? So when is your next webinar for Praxis Core Writing? I need help. Okay, it'll be a few weeks. However, I have an online course for that. So if you go into our programs, you go to Praxis Core Writing. I have an online course for that if you're struggling. I also have a lot of YouTube videos if you don't want to spend the money. You can also email us and we'll point you in the right direction. info@kathleenjasper.com. We'll get you all that information, okay? All right, Brianna, Ashlyn, Sue, Caitlin, all of you guys, thank you so much for attending today. I am going to take a rest now. Make sure you keep studying. Take breaks when you need to. Incremental practice is better than cramming everything in one weekend. Thank you so much for joining me today and have an awesome day.